Final Fantasy 16. I've been having a lot of fun playing this over the summer, and I wanted to talk to you about it. Now, when I still play Final Fantasy, I still think of those old school turn-based RPGs. But this one is action-based. And yes, you still have cooldown abilities like MMOs, but you could honestly nick away a lot of damage with just swinging away. And though you do need to get used to the dodging mechanic, it is actually quite engaging and fun. And after playing it for a short while, you'll adapt to this type of gameplay very quickly. With that being said though, I do recommend you start on a lower difficulty. That way you can get a lot of gear and gain that level 50 you need in order for your second playthrough. Now, what surprised me about this game is that it actually has an M rating. After playing it, I can see why. Within the first 5 minutes, because this is YouTube, I heard the F word at least 20 times. And there are some more adult-oriented scenes. The storytelling in this is really good. You play as Clive, who is a guard or a shield to his younger brother Josh. And Josh happens to be the dominant of the Phoenix. Now, what is a dominant? A dominant is someone who's able to use magic and actually use the abilities of a summon. And dominants are also considered to be bearers, and bearers are people who could just use magic. They can't quite use the summon abilities, but they're able to use the basic abilities of magic. Now, if a bear uses too much magic, unfortunately, they petrify themselves. They become basically stoned into a rock, and they die.
Now, one thing I like about this is that the game definitely sets up the plot really quick, and it shows you the relationship that most characters have with each other. Your mother comes off pretty cold, to say it nicely, and you basically are sent on a mission with you and your brother Josh, and chaos ensues. After a short little incident, your very cold and distant mother decides to ship you off into a life of servitude to an empire. And this was actually an enemy empire against that. So she's been kind of, working behind the scenes with the enemy and having affairs and such. And during one of these missions, you find your childhood friend Jill, and you decide to free her instead of execute her. And then you're joined by Sid, who is a rebellious leader and the Sid of this game. And he's, against what the Empire is doing. And also has his own personal quest of taking down the crystals, because he thinks that the crystals are actually causing this blight that's sucking up all of the energy and all of the life from the land.
Side quests in this, but those side quests tend to be giving you most of the experience instead of you just going off and just killing monsters over and over. And then eventually you will unlock hunts, which are specific missions where you hunt down specific creatures to gain various rewards and goods and experience again. Though they aren't particularly tough in this one. There are maybe 2 or 3 that I found difficulty with, but for the most part they were pretty simple. After all, as you develop throughout the game, you unlock more, which means your skill level while playing the game increases to what you need in order to defeat those monsters. And yes, later on, towards the end of the game, there are certain areas where you could go back and you can grind up those levels in case you want to. And they do give you this option to replay some of the story missions through an obelisk. Though honestly, unless you just want to review the cutscenes or whatnot, I didn't find this to be a good way to get experience. They also bring back their tech tree or sphere grid. that they've had since Final Fantasy X. You get a majority of the elemental summons except for Leviathan. Now, unlocking each of these summon abilities, Clive eventually gains the abilities of each of the characters that he defeats who are dominants. And I know that's a minor spoiler, but using these you can mix and match and make a combat style of your own so you could pulverize enemies that appear in your midst. Unfortunately though, Clive's ability to use his own personal summon is kind of locked down just to cutscenes. It would have been cool to transform into that, you know, like out on the battlefield and just smash something up. Now this game has several difficulties, and I played on a lower one because I knew that after I beat that I would unlock Final Fantasy, the hardest mode of them all. And I kind of did this on purpose, but that's because I wanted to capture gameplay for you guys and show you what the game is like. But now I'm playing through on Final Fantasy, and there's a few notes that I want to introduce to you here. First off, on your first playthrough, you're maxed out to level 50. And your second playthrough, you're able to grind to level 100. Now, when you select New Game Plus, you'll always start out at level 50 if that is what your previous save that you beat the game on is at. But on your second playthrough, you get to create much more better equipment. Also, your abilities that you gain on your sphere grid also transfer over, which is nice because that means that on your second playthrough you don't have to worry about wasting all that time grinding out your sphere grid. You can literally just continue off where you left off on your first playthrough and complete the max set probably by the end of the game. And I almost forgot to talk to you about the exploration of this game. Now, it does have kind of a world map. You don't fly around like you did in almost all of the Final Fantasy games that have been released. Even 15 had a way for you to travel around. But this one's stuck on a static map where you choose different locations. Now, all the locations are interconnected, at least if you're on the same continent. And you can explore a wide, vast map and just go pummeling across things. Especially when you're doing hunts, you'll find yourself literally trying to explore and trying to find out where these little monsters are before you defeat them. I'll just say that this game is a game for older Final Fantasy fans. The ones that got tired of turn-based combat and have become adjusted to newer type mechanics that we have in action games these days. Or for people that have always wanted to get into Final Fantasy but that are older now, that wanted to check out Final Fantasy but missed out on all the other ones because they were so busy playing other games at the time. And no, I wouldn't recommend this to, you know, little kids to play. It might be one of those games where I'll go for the Platinum Trophy and still go back and play it all over again, you know, just for fun, just to see the story again. Kind of like the way I do with some other Final Fantasies I enjoy, like Final Fantasy IV or Final Fantasy VI.